Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for a not game, sort of game theory video, community discussion. If you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. So today I'm going to try to talk about many random things that I've talked about before, but I made this recent video talking about the Project 2XKO, the League of Legends game, and it got brought up in the comments how although they're trying to bill or shill this game as it's being made by supposedly so many great community leaders, so many big galaxy brains, all this kind of stuff. What is actually their credentials? And did they actually just get the job because the FGC, as usual, is a circle jerk, correct? And so I guess I want to talk about the history of, sort of the history of tech and fighting games, and who are some of the original galaxy brains in the scene, right? And of course, what I've said before still stands to this day, right? Most people cannot talk about a video game, right? Most people are not good at video games. It is very rare to meet somebody who can do both. Somebody that can both play said video game and can talk about it is extremely rare. It's already rare enough for somebody to be able to actually talk about the game intelligently. It's very rare for someone to actually be good at the game. So it's going to be even rare for someone to be able to do both, right? And of course, I'm going to talk shit about people in this video. And don't confuse me talking shit about people, even though I'll be stating facts. Don't confuse me stating a fact, talking shit about someone, as me telling you not to watch other people that talk about fighting games, right? I encourage you to be a sponge, right? Maybe I shouldn't say I encourage you to watch other people, but I think you should get your feet wet and know what other people are about, right? Especially if you're trying to understand fighting games. Just like if you want to be able to dissect video games like I have, I think it's important to get your feet wet in multiple different types of fighting games, right? So then you can apply that knowledge of one fighting game to the new fighting game that you're perhaps trying to anticipate, dissect, analyze, whatever word you want to call it. But this is, again, the point is, although I'm going to talk shit about people, this isn't me telling you not to watch anybody, right? Because you should have an understanding of what everyone is like. You don't have to just watch me. Unlike other people who lie and say, don't watch Clayton, he's evil. I mean, you got people saying you have to say Clayton's tech is fake and not real, or you have to give credit to other people. I mean, that's just absolutely insane that people do that in the fighting game community, but I would never do that. I would encourage you to varying degrees to watch everybody, right? Anyway, so also I should preface this with, I know it's a long forward, right? Of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased because I'm holding people to my standards. So, of course, my standards, considering I'm at the top, and I know so much more than these paupers, so to speak, right? Of course, I'm going to be a little bit harder, right? But on people, right? But if you, a more common man, let's say, you might still get, more enjoyment, right? But when I think about, galaxy brains and content creators, there's not a lot of galaxy brains, period, even back in the day with fighting games, to be honest with you. Even back in the day, you have to remember sort of the culture of fighting games. First of all, before the internet was really widespread, I mean, where are you even going to get information in the first place about fighting games, right? You'd probably just be getting it from your local strategy guide, right? So a galaxy brain to you at that point might be reading the strategy guide, right? It's not like you have the internet or playing your friends. You had to actually use your brain a little bit yourself, right? Because if you weren't winning, you weren't playing. And I always say that is perhaps one of the reasons that I've been so good and have been able to consistently call games as long as I have, because I was alive at that point where I was just young enough to remember Street Fighter 2. And again, unless you're winning, you're not playing. And Street Fighter 2 was so popular at that time, you had to watch people play. So you had to be able to analyze a match. And that's why so many fundamental stuff is like lost on newer school players. Because if you couldn't do the fundamental stuff, if you weren't good at fundamental stuff, you were never going to be winning enough to actually try the tech that you're reading about, to try this weird combo, etc., etc., right? So I had to teach myself. And again, I didn't play a lot of video games. I said one of the only happy moments of my life is I remember my grandma sometimes during the weekend would take me to play Street Fighter at the arcade randomly, right? So again, I never was someone that was actually playing a lot. I had to play in my head all the time. Another thing too is once the internet started becoming more available, and even I found out about it, let's say, and I found out about Street Fighter stuff. You got to remember that a lot of the good players, and quotationally good players, and perhaps legitimately good players, there was definitely, and I'm sure people have seen those memes, save that shit for nationals. Don't teach other people stuff, right? Because when you get down to it, even saying that, you have to respect and you have to understand that a lot of people aren't that smart about fighting games. You finding just one little trick that not everybody knows, one little gimmick that not everybody knows is pretty significant, okay? And I think that goes to show you how scarce knowledge is from back in the day in fighting games, right? And just how little actual galaxy brains there were, right? In terms of tech for fighting games. This idea that tech was so scarce, you had actual good players, that many good players, from quotationally good to legitimately good, didn't want to help anybody in the first place, okay? They didn't want to talk about games because they would save their, hopefully what they would think is a good strategy for a tournament, or, you know. A great example of this, and I think it shows to really emphasize the scarcity of knowledge and what Street Fighter was at one time. And this isn't me talking shit about Vai in terms of what he has done in the scene or his legacy. This isn't me talking shit about him as a competitive player. But look at Street Fighter Alpha 2 and the Vai CC. That for some reason is held to some legendary status, and it's an absolute fucking joke. Okay? It's incredible to me that that is a legendary thing. The Vai CC, it's not even tech, right? And I say part of the reason why I think the Vai CC is so mystified in the fighting game community is people got to remember during Street Fighter Alpha 2, I said before, I thought Street Fighter was dead after Street Fighter Alpha 2. As a kid, nobody talked about Street Fighter after Alpha 2. People did not play Street Fighter Alpha 2. It was so extremely unpopular, right? It wasn't really being shown in magazines anymore, you know. People still played. They might want to pretend, but people were still playing Street Fighter Alpha 1 when it came out. Now, your argument might be that Street Fighter Alpha 1 kind of killed part of the community, but that doesn't stop the fact that people, you know, still were playing it. But after Alpha 2, Jesus Christ, people didn't like Alpha 2, and you couldn't pay people to play Street Fighter 3. But Street Fighter Alpha 2 has this sort of mystical, legendary status for some reason, because it's a fairy tale. It's a bunch of, I guess you would call them boomers now, who were like, you know what, everyone gave up Street Fighter, but we're the real ones that love it. And to get people excited about it, we're going to pretend that who was considered the best in America at the time, you know, him and Choi, that Vai, he had this amazing tactic. It's such a great tactic, the Vai ACC. And you read about it and you hear about it, and then you're like, it's just the fucking property of the move. The Vai CC means nothing, right? Seriously, think about this. Do you think that we have had a scene where there has been many galaxy brains when people still talk about the VACC as if it's tech. It's how the fucking move works. It's literally the system of the game. The VACC is an absolute joke. Like when people talk about all the tech I've done, explaining game systems before everybody, like I said, goddamn, I didn't even know Desk used to be in the threads where I used to explain video games, because Desk was a nobody back in the day. It never even crossed my mind, right? I didn't realize he was in the fucking threads when I was explaining all these games. And I was explaining these games very young, right? And you know, I put out so much tech that people have to say it's fake because it's so, it's game changing. Like people can't even believe it. You know, I just put out all this Marvel tech. People can't even believe it's real. They think it's fake. Game after game, right? That's like real tech. If the VACC was something like, oh, well, if you do this exact setup, the VACC has to hit you and you can't get out of it. No, it's just the fucking property of the moon. That's why I always say Alpha 2 is such a fairy tale game. It's a cool game, and if you like the game, that's fine, but it's a shitty game. Terrible game. The mythology, the mythos of the game is just absolute trash. But I think it's a great example of when we talk about what is Galaxy Brains in the history of the scene, right? And I know this is going to be a long video probably already. Probably got another 10 minutes to go, right? But it just goes to show that the VACC is nothing, right? And you have a lot of people that they didn't want to talk about tech. That shows you how scarce tech was. A lot of time tech isn't even tech. It's just the system of the game. He used the system better than other people were doing at the time, right? It wasn't even like an optimal CC or some shit. But when I got into the scene and I realized, when I realized that I was allowed to enter tournaments and I started winning right off the bat, you know, there were guys, and like just to name, mention guys, right? Of course, I think, is it TWZ or TZW? Excuse me, I'm sorry, and that's my fault for not remembering. Because one plays Bison, is actually a player, and one is the combo guy. You know, obviously that guy still plays Super Turbo, still plays Gal. He made a lot of combo videos back in the day, you know, and you would hear about him and the stuff that he did. And I've talked about the CPS chains and all this kind of stuff. I don't know actually who found that out. I'm not saying he found it out. I don't know, but I think we've had a discussion about this on the channel before. CPS 1 chains weren't even a thing when I was playing. That was actually something that was like brought to America after. Like, I don't remember anyone doing that when I was a kid. But, you know, TZW, TWZ, even when I first started making combo videos, again, you got to remember when I made that CVS2 video, and it shows how scarce knowledge is in fighting games, and it's rare to put something out. You can go back and look at my CVS2 video, and you got to remember, only the Japanese had ever done anything above that at the time that I did my CVS2 video. That's why I got so much attention for that. And, you know, lo and behold, the Japanese, apparently, you know, their videos were actually on speed 1, and they might have actually been using TAS and everything like that. But, you know, besides that, a lot of even CVS2 videos, you think it was basically the Japanese had done theirs and theirs was the best. I made my video. And then, you know, Persona, who still makes videos, to my knowledge, Persona still makes combo videos. And then after that, it's just like nobody. A lot of stuff is just very basic, bare bones. And even getting into the scene around that time, CVS1, whatever like that, you know, James Chen is considered I would say that James Chen, I don't know, you know, I got to throw shade on James Chen just because of what a shady fucking asshole he is. But James Chen is almost like you could compare him to today's average content creator, I would say. He's just background noise, right? And this is why I say I'm not telling you can't watch anybody that talks shit about me. Because if you enjoy the hobby of, say, video games, sometimes you just want to listen to background of someone talking about a hobby you enjoy, right? And then you have to, hopefully that you're smart enough to be able to differentiate between what is real and what they're saying. But sometimes you just want to hear, oh, I like this hobby, I want to hear this person talking, right? But James Chen back in the day, you know, to be honest, I cannot tell you a single tournament that I ever remember James winning. Can't remember ever hearing about it. If he was ever winning tournaments, you can prove me wrong. James Chen was one of those guys that, oh, hey, he's from California. California's supposed to be all these good people that we hear about. And then James Chen, like a content creator, was background noise, right? When I talk about, a lot of times you're just listening to people's background noise. Since people weren't actually vlogging, doing videos on Street Fighter, James Chen was one of those people that you would read in Game Facts and you would hear that he's from California, right? And you would read him like, oh, this guy, you're reading what he's saying in these Game Facts. It sounds like he knows what he's talking about, at least a little bit, right? And that's how he got credit. He was like the very first, almost you could say, shill of the fighting game community. He's from California. Well, yeah, maybe that means he's automatically good. He's writing. It sort of looks like he knows what he's talking about. I can't find any tournament that he's actually won. There's no actual real big brain idea in this, but his information is easily digestible to the common person that knows a little bit about Street Fighter. Say like, he looks like he knows a little bit, right? James Chen is almost, the very first content creator background noise for the common masses, I would say, but not an actual galaxy brain, right? If we're talking about, CVS2 and all this kind of stuff, a lot of people just do, they'd post a combo or something, say that Magistorius. I don't remember his name. I know he's gotten a lot of credit for stuff. That's actually the guy I was referring to, that he did not like how I was explaining games because he was one of those cliche math nerd dudes to me, right? Again, I guess I'm talking shit about him. I don't know if he's ever actually talked shit about me per se, but, just kind of stating a fact as a fact, right? The Sonic Hurricane guy, right? He was one of those guys that never heard about him winning a tournament, but you would see him talk, and he talked in a lot of like frame data math lingo. And so that got him street cred. And to my knowledge, he also was doing a lot of programmable stuff. It wasn't actually him, to my knowledge, right? But he was analyzing the game on a mathematical level that gave him street cred. But I remember even back when I was explaining all these things like the Kim Infinite, which I'm not saying I made. I didn't have the original idea for it, but I'm the one that came up with, made it real, so to speak, right? But so he was one of those guys, when I was referring to that one CVS2 video, where he didn't like when I talked about how, oh, you can tell that the game is glitched right now because I can see my supers no longer have shadows. And he didn't like that because that wasn't scientific enough, right? And it's like, oh, geez, okay. I can tell the game is busted, right? I don't give a fuck about all these numbers you're talking about. So, there might be someone that may say, oh, Tragic had game combos or everything like that. But, Tragic, I don't remember Tragic ever really finding anything. Tragic was another guy to me that was just good enough to say that, oh, he's making combos. He seems to understand the game. But Tragic wasn't a guy that was actually a game changer, but he was a Cali guy and he could do combos. And so that got him street cred. But like I said, when you talk about actual game changing perspectives and on everything like that, there's not a lot of people that had any credentials, real credentials for that they've had ideas in tech that changed the way the games are played, right? Mike Z made a lot of things, whatever. You know what I mean? But I don't think Mike Z was actually, I don't know how many tournaments Mike Z was actually winning though, right? But maybe he did for a while in MVC2, but my MVC2 lore is a little bit iffy. But when I think about Galaxy brains, I think some of the ones that actually stand out is you think about Serlin actually had his own site, and Serlin was a guy that actually had some street cred for doing well in tournaments. Obviously, guys like Viscant could write a lot about games, and Viscant was competitive. Viscant was not a top tier player, at least that I remember, until the Marvel 3 days. Viscant was considered a good player, but not, the top tier kind of player. But he was a guy that would talk about games a lot, and you could tell that he had an understanding of them more so than just I'm going to list down frame data for all my arguments, right? And then, of course, Viscant did go on to do very well for himself in MBC3. But again, you got to think when I'm talking about this 2x KO thing that, if you're thinking about they're bringing in the greatest minds of the fighting game community, there's honestly not many people that are smart about fighting games. They can tell you more than just, I looked at the frame data. I know something. They're not game changers. They don't have good ideas. They can't talk a good game. And a lot of the, good players, let's say, wouldn't fucking talk about anything in the first place because tech was actually so scarce. People don't want it out because it's so rare to find tech in the first place, right? So, I mean, I do think the 2XO shows that, right? That you have supposedly these big brain guys, and I can't even tell you what they've done. Yes, I remember Pat the Flip writing about a lot of stuff. Don't remember Pat the Flip winning tournaments. I remember he used to shout me out. Oh, then all of a sudden he hates me. Jose Canseco befriended me, then then allowed themselves to take credit for all the stuff I was doing in Dragon Ball FighterZ, then got aboard this Clayton hates transgender people out of nowhere. Guess that got them a job, Clockwork, Clockwork had been nice to me quite a number of times, and he was shouting me out many times, and then all of a sudden, dude, why can't anybody mention my name? Oh, I don't know. Does he actually not know? I don't know. But, I couldn't even tell you Galaxy Brains in the FGC. It's so rare to meet someone who has done anything, who can talk a good game, anything, right? You got to remember, it's so rare. Even in Guilty Gear, right? Guilty Gear. Before I started making all the tech videos for Guilty Gear, which you can see, I even uploaded some of my old VHS tapes, all this kind of stuff, right? And especially that second video that I made for Guilty Gear was, before that even got released to the public, that was already 4-6 months old or something like that. It just took so long for people to actually put it out, but I was showing it at tournaments and all this kind of stuff, right? No one had done anything like that ever. It was just so far above, even the months and months it took for it to come out. It was just like, whoa, this is just so far above what everyone else is doing, right? When I first got into Guilty Gear, people basically knew the very basics of jump canceling. They didn't even know how to store it. Nothing like that was explained until I talked about it, right? And they had impossible dust. Guilty Gear had the tech level was so low for the game before I was explaining all the bugs in the game, deep diving into the game, right? It was just, there's impossible dust and you can super jump install, super jump install. And it was only the very basic of super jump install. It wasn't like storing super jump install, none of these dust things, all these super big code. It was not talked about whatsoever, right? And again, that's why I say, and people say, oh, you're so full of yourself, whatever. You're a narcissist. I've said before many times, right? I feel lucky that I've been able to win as much as I have in games, right? Especially considering how rarely I play, right? How rarely I practice. The apparatuses, let's call them, that I have played on. The health issues I have done, right? That's just me stating a fact. There's no one ever that has done as much for the community in terms of tech, combos, knowledge, all that kind of stuff. And it's even more rare that I was actually winning all these tournaments, right? Not all the tournaments. That's a mistake. I shouldn't say I won all the tournaments. But even my first year of disability, I won every tournament almost I entered for almost a entire year, that first year of disability. And I said, it's funny, I saw that the Unconquerable, that Sean guy, right? Is that Unconquerable? That dude was at tournaments that I won. Very, very sick. Extremely sick. Around that time, and I told this story, I haven't told this story in a while. People got to remember, dude, this idea that I only won casual tournaments, right? In Michigan, there was only, Guilty Gear XX to Accent Core. I don't know how many years that would have been. there might have only been like 3, 4 tournaments ever in Michigan. Even that, there's no way there was 5. I can't even remember that. 3 or 4 in like a many year period of time. People would not even enter. I was beating people so bad, right? So it was hard to even get a tournament. So people like Clayton only won local tournaments. What local tournaments in Michigan? People wouldn't even have it. There was that one tournament. I didn't drive. It was actually Kenji who drove. Kenji drove us to Pittsburgh. The tournament got canceled when I showed up. They canceled the entire tournament. I was beating people so badly at that time in Guilty Gear. They canceled the entire fucking tournament when I showed up because it was just, people have no idea. My health was at such a terrible thing and I was still just, no one could beat me at the time, right? It was just ridiculously how bad I was beating people. You had to pray I was really, really sick, or like that Evo put me on a projection monitor every other match to fuck with me, right? Don't let me play all this kind of shit. Like, and let's pray that he's really sick right now. It was just, I told that story after that Evo 2003 when I actually got to sit down on a regular TV, get my fingers warmed up a little bit. I was destroying everybody for free. And I remember Ruin was like, oh my God, I'm glad you didn't play like that in the tournament. You know? That was like, it was just for free, dude. Like it was ridiculous. But, you know, so I guess that's me tuning my own horn as usual. But, you know, and then Dragon Ball and Marvel stuff I've done, and God even did Strive, and you know, Strive. Look at that guy. People try to say that Ken Deep guy is a galaxy brain. The guy pretended that he's never watched my videos before, but you can actually go see in Discords he's watching my videos, right? And then he pretended on Twitter and all this other stuff that he's never watched my video. And then he had to hack the game, whatever it was, to see the frame data, and he pretended that he predicted Strive. I didn't have to hack the game to do that. Okay, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, are there even galaxy brains in the first place? Not really, dude. When I think about smart people in the scene, it's so rare. You know, again, you think about Viscount was a guy who could talk a good game, and he could talk more than just math, you know, and he was considered a good player. And eventually, you know, Marvel, he actually did very well for himself. You know, Serlin was a guy that had tournament results, right? Was doing well. And he talked a lot about games, you know, but most guys, the community, it was really just background noise. And that's what I'm always trying to tell people. I'm not telling you not to watch this background noise because it's a hobby that you enjoy. Seemingly, I would assume if you're watching videos like this, you enjoy fighting games, right? But a lot of the stuff, and even back in the day, it was just, oh, hey, this guy knows enough that I can enjoy the hobby in this idea that I'm talking to someone that also likes Street Fighter. And they know enough about Street Fighter that although I'm not probably going to learn anything new, we're bouncing things off each other, and that's enjoyable for me, right? Oh, this guy does combos. I guess that's kind of fun. Oh, he's talking about math stuff. Maybe he knows what he's talking about. God, he can't talk about, unless he's doing a math problem. This guy can't talk about a game on a deep level, right? And then do you hope a good player would talk to you? Good players mostly didn't want to talk because tech was that scarce. Right? God, you know, I should say this. I remember even, you know, I remember the Wolf brothers, right? Is it Graham and Alex? They even tried to make, was it Shinakuma? God, this shows how old I am. They had tried to make a website to compete with SRK called Shinakuma, I think, right? Am I correct? And they wanted to actually have top players talk about tech, right? Am I correct? Was it Shinakuma? Someone could correct me. I know I'm probably the oldest person even talking about this now, right? But they had made Shinakuma, and they wanted it to actually be more, actually talk about the strategy of Street Fighter. And I think the Wolf brothers, you know, because they had actually worked on strategy guides, and it didn't take off, right? And I've never had, I don't remember if, I mean, I met Graham and Alex, right? Correct? When I was a kid, but I don't remember us having a lot of conversations. You know, I've talked to APOC, you know, quite a bit. But I remember even that website, it didn't really take off, right? So There's just not enough people that can actually talk about a fighting game or want to talk about it, right? Besides shilling something. Again, there's so many content creators you can see now, they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, look at the Buttmonger thing. I mean, just besides the fact that Buttmonger has lied about me, Buttmonger used to think that combos were fake. Those videos are still on my channel. Buttmonger thought combos were fake in fighting games. I mean, come on. Lord Knight made 4 videos. He can't even talk about his own, the fucking Dragon Ball Fighter Z. Right? 4 videos. He kept trying to move the goalposts and change his argument. Dude had no idea the fuck he's talking about. He's just background noise. Like a lot of these guys, they serve no purpose to a connoisseur, let's say, of fighting games, to be honest with you. Right? Unless you were just getting into a game. And again, I'm not going to tell you not to watch anybody. I'm telling you to watch people, and you can get your own value out of it, you know. But a lot of people, for me, at the level that I am, and I know it's kind of unfair because I'm so far ahead of everybody else, but I would not personally watch anyone, any content creator, unless I was just that fucking bored, or I don't really know anything about the game and I need a quick, give me a cliff note and then I'll research it more myself. Because I don't trust your opinion, because there's just so little of people that can actually talk about a game, dude. So anyway, this was a very long video, half hour. When you talk about, can people talk about a video game? Who's going to be making this game, Clades? And who's going to make 2XKO? Most of these people can't actually talk about a game in the first place. Just to be honest with you, right? I mean, most of these people, their street cred is clout. Is this circle jerk of clout, not because of actual credentials, you know? Or it's just, oh, I know math, so that makes me seem smart, but I don't actually know anything about it. I don't actually have, you know, the track record or credentials, whatever you want to say, the accomplishments, you know, to back up anything I say, you know. I don't know. Half hour video already. If you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. The end.